Life is a microcosm of chess. I display this in a piece I like to call Surgery. In presenting my perspective, I do not demand that you adopt this as your own, only to see if there's anything to be gained by acknowledging the reality that this expression represents. I call this wisdom-ism. Enjoy. White plays king's pawn to e4. I always anticipate my opponents to respond in kind. However, black doesn't. Black plays queen's bishop pawn to c5, the Sicilian. How interesting. I recalculate. To ensure that the move that I want to make will not be met with severe consequences. It won't. The gambit will still apply. White continues. White plays queen's pawn to d4, offering the gambit. It is the Smith-Morra. The gambit, a perpetual intertwining of grandiose strategical planning, with an alarming maze of difficult tactical finesses and combinative motifs. It is no exaggeration to affirm that mastery of the Spanish gambit is a requisite for anyone aspiring to become a strong chess player. James Mason. Black accepts the gambit. Black captures. cxd4. White plays queen's bishop pawn to c3, offering the gambit of another pawn. The pawn, a blunt, smooth little soldier that expects only death, and in this humble aspiration is ever so frequently rewarded. Pawns are made for sacrifice. It is their function. It ennobles them. Black accepts the gambit. Black captures. dxc3. White captures. Knight b1 xc3. This is the position envisioned by white and paid for with a pawn. A knight on c3, a pawn on e4, and an open position to where white can develop his bishops to menacing squares with just a few moves. From my learning, observation, and teaching, I've come to realize that any and all gambits offer one of two things: time or space, and one cannot have both. And because of the time it took black to capture the extra pawn, he now has an undeveloped position and an open c-file. An advantage constructed by white intended to be exploited in later phases of the game. However, each phase has one cardinal rule. Play the opening like a book, the middle game like a magician, and the end game like a machine. Rudolf Spielmann. I anticipate white's next two moves to be met with reflex action. White plays knight g8 to f3, threatening to capture the pawn on e5. Black responds knight b8 to c6, protecting the pawn on e5. White responds bishop f1 to c4. And this completes white's opening, and it is a poisonous position. Black must now tread with extreme caution. Any miscalculation or the slightest deviation from this opening will be met with severe consequences, and with the improvisation of novelties requiring in-depth study, and black's candidate moves being less than ideal. I anticipate black's next move to be the activation of his g8 knight to f6, in keeping within the comfort of the line. However, black doesn't. Black plays bishop f8 to e7. C'est plus crime, c'est une faute. In chess, it is worse than a crime. It is a blunder. This particular move loses black the game. The activation of the g8 knight to f6 protects the h5 square, the g4 square, and the square that is of particular importance to me, the d5 square. An opportunity that has arisen, white intends to exploit immediately. Going against the rules of classical chess, white activates his queen d1 to d5, completing the battery with the bishop on c4, threatening to capture the pawn on f7 and checkmating black's king. Black's position has now become untenable. I anticipate him to concede. However, he doesn't. To prevent the incursion of the queen to f7, black now activates his g8 knight, but to h6, with hopes of preventing the pawn from being captured on f7. However, it doesn't. Bishop c1 x h6. Black now concedes. Surgery.